Hi, welcome back to Cooking with Katie. We are on an adventure today. We are here with Bob here at the White Earth Tribal College in the Extension Center area, and we have found ourselves a project here. We are working on a chicken of the woods mushroom that it was brought in from a local collected. Is that what I want to say, Bob?
Yeah, a local collector, harvester found it in our yard.
And we are just cleaning it up and preparing it because we are going to make a fun dish out of it. So Bob is just going to kind of walk us through the process of getting it from the yard to our fry pan, so to say. So give us a little rundown here, Bob.
Okay, so thank you, Katie, for introducing what we're going to be working on here today. And as I said earlier, this was collected out of a local resident's yard, and this particular one is feeding off the root of a large oak tree that lives in her yard. But as we go through it, or as the mushroom goes through it, in essence what's happening is the oak tree is probably in the early stages of dying. And so fungus, being one of the greatest recyclers in nature, they're the ones who start expediting the process and extending the food chain or the web of life.
Sure.
As the mushroom slowly starts feeding on the pieces of the oak that are dying. And in this case, it's in the early stages, it's in the root. That tree will probably stand there for many years, yet quite healthy. At some point, it may move up the tree, and a different subspecies of the same mushroom may start growing on the stalk of the tree itself or the stem of the tree.
Sure.
And it's a little bit different. This particular chicken of the woods is the one that feeds off the roots, grows on the ground.
Okay.
Once it goes up the stem of the tree, then it's more likely to be a sulfur shelf, which is also a chicken of the woods, but just a little slightly different variety.
Okay.
So over the next while here, we're just going to be cleaning and washing the mushroom and prepping it for today's feast as well as for storage.
Wonderful. That was my question. Okay, so we're going to go through a washing process. If we, for say, weren't all going to eat it, would it be a good idea to not wash the portion we're not going to eat?
No, because there's this particular one, there's a lot of dirt.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is finish cleaning, giving it the basic cleaning. As you see, there's a big chunk here on the bottom, and there's a lot of grass and other things on the mushroom.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna clean all that up.
Wonderful.
And then we'll talk some more about prepping it for consumption.
Wonderful.
Immediate consumption as well as for storage.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. All right, so we'll join back with you once we've gotten through that first process and kind of summarize what we did, and then we'll get back with you.
Okay, so you seen earlier in the video what we started with. The raw mushroom, uncut, lots of leaves, grass, dirt, and various insects. And so we worked for about an hour and a half cleaning it up and getting it ready for the next stages, which are one, we're gonna cook a feast with some of this morning yet, and the rest of it we'll prep it for freezing. So with that said, I'm gonna take one of these pans and essentially what we're gonna do here is we're gonna saute that whole works, all that mushroom. We're gonna saute it, which is the beginning of the process. And you don't want to overload your pans because you want to be able to keep track of what's going on with it.
And Bob had mentioned earlier that you do want to heat your oil to a light smoke, right?
Yeah, to a light smoke.
And then you turn it down.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I was informed of by an old mushroom man. That when you're prepping these things, you don't want to cook them too hot. I think is part of the deal, because you can be disruptive of flavor if you cook them too hot at this point. And so what we're doing now, I've got a couple of pans going here, and what we're watching for is once these start to cook, you want to keep them on the heat till they quit giving up water. You know, and I think that's the key for whether you're eating them immediately or if you're going to freeze them. If we tried to freeze them as is, I think we end up with a gooey mess that just doesn't taste very good. So this particular mushroom and a few others, and the different mushrooms, they vary in terms of how you prep them for storage. Some you can dehydrate, some you can do this process, the sauteing. I don't know, I've never seen anybody try and pickle them or anything like that. I don't know how that would be.
Yeah?
I don't know how that would be.
Sure.
But
Now tell me, so we're obviously sauteing, preparing for freezing, but tell me a little bit about, can we eat them raw, just as is?
yeah, we can eat them all. I think these particular ones, the sauteing helps to concentrate the flavor.
Okay.
Yeah. As is, right out of the pan, uncooked. I won't say they're bland, there's some flavor there.
Yeah.
Kind of an earthy flavor.
Sure.
And the longer you chew it and work it down,
Yeah.
the more fuller that flavor becomes.
Uh-huh.
But putting them through this sauteing process, it helps to, I think it helps to concentrate the flavor, and it alters the flavor a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll know here in a few minutes.
Mm-hmm. So potentially you could say personal preference of what people wish to do, so you're good going either way.
Yeah, but some of these, especially like these chicken of the woods, they tend to get large. So might be a bit much for a lot of people. So yeah, this way here, you can enjoy the mushroom for weeks and months afterwards.
And we should say the mushroom that was brought in was 13.5 pounds. Is that what you?
Yeah, we started off with 13.5 pounds, and through the careful cleaning of the mushroom, you know, we're probably still up around 10.5 pounds. I guess I didn't weigh it.
No, but ample amount. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, plenty of mushroom for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So as you said there, it was a local resident who brought it in. Tell me a little bit about, are there, obviously this is an edible mushroom. If people do want to go out, are there mushrooms they should look for, the non-edible types, or is it more just of edible that we would see in our local areas?
Well, I tell everybody when they're getting into mushrooms, there's essentially 4 types. I say start there, and this being one of them. Either this here chicken of the woods variety or its close cousin, the sulfur shell. They're both basically the same mushroom and use the same food source. The other ones are like morels, lobster, and shaggy mings.
Sure.
They're easily identifiable. It's kind of tough to mistake them for something else because they're very distinct.
Sure.
But if you're just beginning to get your feet on the ground, go after those 4 and just stay with that, and get with a good mycologist or get some really good books. If there's any question about the edibility of a mushroom, leave it.
There you go.
It's important to note that here in this White Earth Reservation area, we have many, 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 many different types of mushrooms. And some of them, we've found everything from, what's commonly called the deadly nightshade, which you absolutely do not want to eat, because once you do, there isn't much that can be done to bring you back. It starts attacking your organs, and you're not going to survive. So that's on the extreme end of the danger. We have them here. They're not real common, but we found them. There are other mushrooms that can be deadly for some people. Other ones, it'll just make them sick.
Right.
They'll be kind of sick for a few days. They're not going to die, but we have those. We have those too. So there's a number of them here. It's not a lot of them, but you want to leave them alone.
Yeah.
There's another category of local mushrooms. They're not going to make you sick. They're not going to kill you, but they just don't taste good. They just are not pleasing to the palate. So there's some of those, and again, they're not going to harm you, but they're not going to be pleasant at all for eating. Then you get it closer in on the varieties that do taste good, are easily identifiable, and that's where I like to just keep folks unless you get some formal training or have a mentor who absolutely knows what they're doing and always carries a book with them.
Yeah.
There's a number of good reference books
Yes.
for mushrooms, identification, do's, don'ts, what's edible.
Okay, so Bob is still cooking away here. We still, we're just waiting to get, like Bob had said, getting that moisture out of our mushrooms. I just love how much they've maintained their color. They're still just absolutely gorgeous, that salmon coral color. But when we cut out there, we were talking briefly a little bit about some resources, and Bob had brought out this book that he uses as a reference. So share this with us, Bob.
Okay, so clearly there's tons of books out there about mushrooms, And everything from the little pocket guide to what many of the professionals call the Bible. The Bible of mushroom identification, harvesting, safety, all the different things about the various species of mushrooms. And so the one we have around here is called Mushrooms Demystified. The author is David Aurora. And as you can see, it's a lot of book. It's a big book. It's a little bit complex in terms of learning how to use it, but once you figure it out, it's invaluable. It's a bit to pack around with you when you're out looking, but it'll also keep you safe. And I think that's the big thing when you start working with mushrooms is staying safe. And this particular book here has enough information that it's going to help you out a lot that way. So there's everything from little slim pocket guides you put in your back pocket to what we call the Bible, and many others do. And for anybody starting out, there's so much food, so much wonderful edible stuff out there.
And this is what Bob had mentioned earlier. He is just poured his pan right into a strainer, if you can see that. And then he said he likes to do that because there was not much liquid. Well, he didn't use much oil in his pan to begin with. Maybe a tablespoon, do you think?
Yeah, maybe.
And I mean, it was a lot of dry cooking. I think of mushrooms a lot, kind of a greasy mushroom, but I think I'm going to enjoy this way much better. And then he does just like to let them sit in the strainer to get rid of some of that extra, if there's any extra water or oil that it can drip off. And there's a little bit gathering on the bottom. So now that we've talked about kind of some of those edible and non-edible, I just do want to briefly touch quickly something. I mean, this is an all-day learning experience for me, but I think when we're working with products that we're gathering and foraging, we have to expect that we're going to have a little bit of dirt, grass, and grime in our products, which we, like you said, we tried to weed through the best that we could. But one thing that we maybe came to a conclusion at the end is you saw in the beginning that large, what we started with, and how it had a bit of grass on the bottom. But Bob, talk us through that. Maybe we did find a few more worms, insects, grass on the bottom. When we would collect it, would you, I mean, you always learn. You just never know what's going to be good or bad. But would it maybe be easier you can break it off to leave some of that behind and not have as much insects and grass in there?
Okay, so the way this one was harvested, it brought part of the root with it, and it's fine, but it also brought a fair amount of dirt, and there seems to be the most insect activity closest to the root. So I think for this particular one, when you're harvesting, it's best to just cut it off just above the root, and you're going to leave some of the grass, some of the insects, some of the other critters that like to party on these mushrooms. They're going to stay there on the ground or in the ground with the mushroom. But I think as you're going through the cleaning process, I think we got to remember that here on this reservation and other places throughout the country, these things were put here for us to help us, to feed us, and that we need to be respectful of these food resources as we go through them, as we harvest, as we prepare, as we cook, as we utilize them. That's kind of a long way of saying There's still a little bit of grass here in some of these mushrooms, just because to trim all of the grass out, you probably would have had to trim maybe up to a third of it off. So we kept some. We kept some of it. And it's fine. You won't really notice it once you start feasting and partying on these here mushrooms in probably about another hour or so. We're gonna start. Well, as soon as these ones are done, we're gonna start cooking our feast with these mushrooms that we cleaned up here this morning.
So we're just gonna kind of continue sauteing. I guess at this point, I really just want to thank you, Bob, for sharing your time and especially your knowledge. It's endless. With us and with myself and my cooking audience to kind of take a little dive and have more of an educational visit this morning. So we're going to kind of wrap the processing of the mushroom part up here. And if we think of more tidbits to add, we'll definitely add them. But next we'll come back and we'll start, like Bob referenced, we'll start cooking our feast. So join us next time for that. Thank you.